My name is Sarah. I'm 41 years old. Good job. Solid marriage. 2 kids who think they know everything about me. For 23 years, I looked like someone who had it all together. Then one Tuesday, I walked into a routine cardiology appointment, and the doctor who opened that door destroyed every wall I'd spent 2 decades building. I knew his face instantly. I knew that birthmark below his ear. I knew, because I spent 4 minutes memorizing him before they took him away. He had no idea who I was. He just smiled and asked me to roll up my sleeve. I sat there letting my own son take my blood pressure. And I said nothing. What nobody knows, not my husband, not my kids, is that I've had a folder on him for 6 years. His name, his photos, his city. He just never knew mine. Subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Now, let me take you back to where this all started. I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. My regular doctor was booked. The receptionist offered me a slot at a different clinic, cardiology, routine checkup, nothing serious. I said fine. Grabbed my coat. Drove there on autopilot. The waiting room was cold. One of those rooms with beige walls and magazines nobody reads. I filled out the paperwork. Name, age, medical history. I wrote everything down like it was just another Tuesday. Because it was. That's what I keep coming back to, it was just supposed to be another Tuesday. The nurse called my name. I picked up my bag, straightened my jacket, and then the door at the end of the hallway opened. A young doctor stepped out. White coat. Clipboard. He was talking to a colleague, laughing about something. Easy smile. Completely relaxed. I stopped walking. Something hit me before I could even explain it. Before logic. Before reason. Just a full stop. Every nerve in my body standing up at once. He hadn't even looked at me yet. But I was already looking at him. And something deep in my chest, something I'd locked away for 23 years, was starting to crack open. He turned around. And I stopped breathing. Not dramatically. Not like in movies. I just forgot to inhale. He walked toward me with his clipboard, introduced himself, held out his hand. I shook it. I heard my own voice say something normal back. I have no idea what. Because just below his left ear, there it was. A small crescent-shaped birthmark. Pale. Curved. Exactly where I remembered it. I had traced that mark with my finger 23 years ago. In a hospital room. In 4 minutes. Before a nurse gently lifted him out of my arms and walked out the door. He gestured toward the examination room. I followed. Sat down. Folded my hands in my lap like a person who was completely fine. He asked about my chest pain. I answered. He typed something. Asked to follow up. I answered again. My voice was steady. My hands were not. He hadn't recognized me. Why would he? I'm just a name on a form. A patient in seat 3. A woman with mild chest discomfort and a routine appointment. He had no idea he was sitting 3 feet away from the person who gave him away. And I had no idea yet whether that was a blessing or the cruelest thing that had ever happened to me. I was 18 the first time I heard his heartbeat. Small college clinic. Paper gown. A nurse who wouldn't make eye contact. I was 8 weeks along and completely alone. The father had already stopped returning my calls. I hadn't told my parents yet, but I already knew how that conversation would end. I told them on a Sunday. My mother cried. My father didn't. He just got very quiet and very organized. Within a week there were pamphlets on the kitchen table. An agency phone number written in my father's handwriting. A plan that wasn't mine. I want to be clear, nobody screamed at me. Nobody threatened me. It was all very calm. That was almost worse. I signed the papers at 34 weeks. A social worker witnessed it. She had kind eyes and a firm handshake, and she told me I was doing a brave thing. I didn't feel brave. I felt 18. He was born on a Thursday morning. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Full head of dark hair. And that birthmark right there, below his left ear, before he'd even taken his first breath in this world. They gave me 4 minutes. I counted every single one. Then I handed him over. Walked out. Told myself it was love. I've been arguing with myself about that ever since. He asked me if I was under any unusual stress. I almost laughed out loud. I told him work had been busy. He nodded. Typed something. Asked about sleep. I said fine. Asked about diet. I said fine. Every answer coming out smooth and normal while my entire body was vibrating at a frequency I couldn't control. He wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm. Pressed the button. We both watched the monitor. It was high. Of course it was high. He made a small note. told me to cut back on sodium, suggested a follow-up in 3 weeks. Completely routine. Completely calm. Just a doctor doing his job with a patient who was technically a stranger. I watched his hands as he typed. His fingers. My mother's hands looked like that. Same shape. Same length. He didn't know that. He asked if I had any questions. I had about 400. I said no. He stood up. Shook my hand again. Told me the front desk would sort out my follow-up appointment. Smiled that easy smile. And walked out. I sat in that room alone for a full minute before I could stand up. The paper on the examination table crinkled every time I shifted. That sound was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. 3 weeks. He wanted me back in 3 weeks. I didn't know yet whether that terrified me or was the only thing I wanted. I made the follow-up appointment. Didn't even think about it. Just handed over my insurance card and said yes to the date they offered like a person on autopilot. I walked to my car. Sat down. Put the key in the ignition. And didn't move for 47 minutes. No music. No phone. Just me staring at the concrete wall of the parking garage while 23 years rearranged themselves inside my chest. I picked up my phone. Called my husband. Hung up before the first ring finished. What was I going to say? Hey, so funny story. I called Dana. My oldest friend. The only person alive who knew about the adoption. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I hung up without leaving a message. I was completely alone with this. And that's when the question came back. The one I'd successfully buried under 2 decades of forward motion and deliberately chosen normalcy. It came back not gently. Not slowly. It came back like a door kicked off its hinges. Did I make the right choice? Not in an abstract way. Not philosophically. I mean, did I make the right choice for him? Because he's not a memory anymore. He's not a what if. He's a doctor. He laughs easily. He has kind hands and good instincts, and he notices things. Someone raised him. Someone else raised my son. I finally started the car. Pulled out of the garage. Drove home doing exactly the speed limit the entire way because I didn't trust myself with anything that required real decisions. The kids were at school. My husband was at work. The house was completely quiet. I opened my laptop. I told myself I was just confirming. Just checking. Just making absolutely sure before I let this go any further in my head. I typed his name into the search bar. Dr. Ryan Mitchell. Hit enter. His hospital profile came up first. I clicked it. Professional headshot. Same easy smile. Board certified. Top of his class. Completed his residency at 26. There was a short biography at the bottom, the kind hospitals put together to make doctors seem approachable. I almost closed the tab. Then one line stopped me cold. Dr. Mitchell was adopted as an infant and raised in Columbus, Ohio. He credits his adoptive family with inspiring his passion for medicine. Columbus. I gripped the edge of the laptop. That was the city. That was the exact city the agency had told me. The family is in Ohio, Sarah. That's all we can tell you. My hands were shaking now. Properly shaking. I pushed the laptop away. Pulled it back. Clicked through to his medical school alumni page. Graduation year matched perfectly. Age matched. City matched. I opened my folder. The one I'd kept for 6 years on a password-protected drive. Cross-referenced everything. Every single detail lined up. This wasn't a feeling anymore. This wasn't me projecting grief onto a stranger with a familiar birthmark. This was real. This was confirmed. And now I had absolutely no idea what to do with that. I told my husband it was a follow-up. He kissed my forehead and told me to drive safe. I sat in the waiting room for 20 minutes before they called my name. Same beige walls. Same cold air. I'd changed my outfit 3 times that morning and I still couldn't tell you why. He walked in. Same easy smile. Same clipboard. He pulled up my file, asked about the chest pain, checked my blood pressure. All completely normal. All completely unbearable. Then he sat down and tilted his head while reading my notes. I froze. My father did that. Exact same angle. Exact same pause. A habit so specific I'd never seen it in anyone else my entire life until right now, in this examination room, in a man who had no idea we shared the same blood. He looked up. Asked if I'd reduce sodium like he suggested. I said yes. I hadn't touched the topic of sodium once all week. He scheduled another follow-up. Shook my hand. Left. I walked out, got in my car, and sat there thinking about one thing only. He tilts his head exactly like my father. And he will never know that. Unless I do something about it. I burned the pasta that night. just stood at the stove staring at nothing while it stuck to the bottom of the pan. My daughter walked in, wrinkled her nose, and asked what happened. I told her I got distracted. She looked at me a second too long before letting it go. My husband noticed at dinner. He kept glancing at me between bites, that quiet, careful way he does when he knows something is wrong but doesn't want to push. I smiled. Passed the bread. Asked the kids about school. I haven't slept properly in 4 days. I lie there at night running the same loop. The birthmark. The head tilt. The folder on my laptop with 6 years of careful, quiet research. The letter I started writing in my head somewhere around 2 a.m., the one I had no idea how to finish. The thing about a secret you've carried for 23 years is that it has weight but no shape. You learn to live around it. You stop noticing how much space it takes. But now it has a face. A name. A schedule at a hospital 12 minutes from my house. My daughter found me crying in the kitchen on Thursday morning. I told her it was hormones. She hugged me anyway. I almost told her everything right there. 14 years old, still in her pajamas, and I almost handed her a secret that would have changed every single thing she thought she knew about me. I didn't. But it was close. I bought a notepad. Actual paper. Felt like this wasn't something that belonged on a screen. I sat at the kitchen table at midnight and I wrote. 3 full pages. Everything. The clinic. The 4 minutes. The folder. The way he tilts his head. Why I did what I did at 18 and why I'm still not sure I had the right to call it love. I read it back. Tore it up. Wrote it again. Different angle. Less about me, more about him. Tore that up too. The 5th version was 1 paragraph. 12 sentences. I read it 4 times, folded it once, and put it in my coat pocket. It stayed there for 6 days. I carried it to the grocery store. To school pickup. To work. Everywhere I went that letter was in my pocket, and everywhere I went I did absolutely nothing with it. Then on Thursday I drove to the hospital. Sat in the parking lot. Told myself I was just thinking. Just sitting. Just breathing. I had the letter in my hand when someone knocked on my window. I jumped so hard I hit the steering wheel. I looked up. It was him. Still in his white coat. Bag over one shoulder. Just finished his shift. He recognized me from the waiting room. Just a concerned look, nothing more, and mouthed through the glass, "Are you okay?" My son was standing at my car window asking if I was okay. The letter was in my hand. I shoved the letter into my coat pocket and rolled the window down. He asked again. Gentle. Not intrusive. Just, "Are you okay?" The way someone asks when they actually want to know the answer. I told him I was fine. Just tired. Long week. He nodded. Believed me. Or pretended to, which was kind either way. Then he leaned against the car next to mine with his bag on the ground and said he always felt strange after long shifts, like the world outside the hospital had kept moving without him. I said I understood that feeling. We talked for 2 minutes. Maybe 3. He mentioned growing up in Columbus. How different the pace felt here. I asked if he had family nearby. He said no, just his adoptive parents back in Ohio. Good people. The best, actually. Then he paused and said something that stopped every thought in my head completely cold. He said he'd always been curious about where he came from. That he thought about it sometimes. But that he'd never pursued it because he didn't want to walk into someone's life uninvited and blow everything apart. I felt the letter burning a hole straight through my coat. I looked at him and said, "I think that's very mature of you." He smiled. Picked up his bag. Said he hoped I felt better soon. I watched him walk through those doors and disappear. Then I drove home and screamed into a pillow until I couldn't anymore. Dana finally called back on a Sunday afternoon. I'd been waiting 6 days. The moment I heard her voice, I started crying before I said a single word. She waited. She's always been good at that. I told her everything. The appointment. The birthmark. The parking lot. The conversation. The letter still sitting in my coat pocket, folded and unfolded so many times the crease had gone soft. She listened without interrupting. All of it. Then she asked me one question. Is this for him or is this for you? I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out. Because the honest answer wasn't clean. It wasn't one or the other. It was both, tangled together in a way I couldn't separate no matter how hard I pulled. I wanted to know he was okay. I wanted him to know he was wanted. I wanted to stop carrying this alone. I wanted. Dana let the silence sit. Then she said, "Those things don't cancel each other out, Sarah. Wanting something for yourself doesn't make it wrong." I thought about that for 3 days straight. Then I made a decision. Not rushed. Not emotional. Deliberate. I contacted the adoption agency. Registered in the Mutual Consent Registry, a system where both parties have to actively choose contact before anything happens. No ambush. No pressure. No blowing anyone's life apart uninvited. I opened a door exactly 1 inch. Then I stepped back. And I waited. The email came on a Tuesday, 6 weeks after I registered. I almost missed it. It landed in my inbox at 7 a.m. while I was making school lunches and arguing with my son about football practice. Ordinary Tuesday. Again. Life has a strange sense of humor. The subject line was from the agency. I put down the knife, walked out of the kitchen, closed the bathroom door behind me and sat on the edge of the tub. He had registered too. Same day I did. Just 4 hours later. I read that line 5 times. For hours. While I was sitting in my kitchen convincing myself I'd made a mistake, he was across the city doing the exact same thing I was doing. We met for coffee 2 weeks later. Neutral place. His suggestion. A small corner cafe, nothing significant, nothing dramatic. Just 2 people and 2 cups of coffee and 23 years sitting quietly between them. He was already there when I arrived. Stood up when he saw me. No white coat this time. Just a person. We talked for 2 hours. Stumbled over words. Laughed at moments that probably weren't funny. Cried once each and pretended not to notice. He has my laugh. Exactly mine. He has my father's head tilt. And just below his left ear, that small crescent birthmark. The one I memorized in 4 minutes before they carried him out of that room. He told me he'd registered the same day because something had shifted in him recently. He couldn't explain it. Just a feeling that the time was right. I didn't tell him about the parking lot. About the letter. Not yet. Some things you save for the second cup of coffee. This isn't where the story ends. This is exactly where it starts. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you've carried something heavy for a long time, I hope this reminds you that some doors, even after decades, can still open.